Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true firsthand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. One of the things I love most about this podcast is the ability to have guests on who have also been on Highly Optimized. While that podcast is focused on their journey and is a little more structured towards helping others specifically in the realm of how to achieve their dreams, this show is designed to dive into the mysteries of life, their plant medicine experiences, and synchronize these two subjects together to create a dialogue focused on exploring the vast realms of the universe in pursuit of being able to comprehend and understand this ever-reaching experience we call life. Today's guest on the show is someone I am extremely excited to dive in with and discuss these subjects with, as he is someone who is committed to the understanding that everyone's experiences with plant medicines and life as a whole are unique and perfect in their own way. Within that personal philosophy, it sets the perfect stage for being able to philosophize, open up each of our minds, and those that choose to take this journey by our side and listening to the show and come through on the overall intention of the show, which is to move into the collective right brain of humanity, step away from the logic of the left brain, and put the magic back into each one of our lives so that we may remember that the mystery of life is just that, a mystery. This episode is sure to stretch your mind, body, and spirit, leave you feeling curious, and allow you to gain new perspectives that will aid in your journey of answering the deepest philosophical questions within the realm of life. With that intention being said, please help me in welcoming my man, Devin Bailey, into the realm of This One Time on Psychedelics. Devin, great to have you back, bro. Long time no see.
It really has been a while.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to be here.
Dude, it's been a whole, 7 minutes since we last chatted?
In Earth minutes, yes. But who knows inside of a black hole how much time would have passed in this short millennia we just passed through.
Yes. And, as Joe Rogan says, time is not linear, right? And I always make that joke, when people are stressing over, something, I like to be the comedic relief to be like, haven't you guys heard Joe Rogan? Time's not real, right? And, we were chatting about, before we hit record about, how we really enjoy the fact that Joe just lets the dialogue run, right? And, it's like a 3-4 hour long podcast, right? And, by no means do I listen to most of his episodes or anything like that, but you got to appreciate the guy. I mean, anyone that can go 3 or 4 hours and have thousands of episodes, I mean, that's a unit in his own right, regardless of what you may think of him otherwise. I mean, that guy, he definitely knows how to interview people and have a dialogue.
Oh, absolutely. I attribute a lot of my growth and insights and, into new areas of exploring reality from, experts that I heard of on a show, people like Graham Hancock and Dennis McKenna. And a lot of my inspiration comes from people who were mentioned on there, like Terrence McKenna, who, isn't even with us currently, but has encapsulated so much wisdom in recorded dialogue like this, that, millions of people are able to hear and connect with and benefit from even decades after it happened. It's a pretty magical medium that we're able to do this on.
Absolutely. And the great thing about this is that, of course, we don't know the future in terms of the world could end, right? This could all be lost. But in a way, it allows people like Terrence McKenna, for instance, to exist even though they've left the physical dimension, right? Their teachings are still here and people can still benefit from them, as you said. And so in a way, they're still alive. And, I forget what sector or religion this whole philosophy came from, but I heard something at one point in my life about how people have 3 deaths, and I forget all of them. But the basis of it was, the first one is when they actually physically die. The second one is when they stop being mentioned around people. And the third one is when they're forgotten in books or something along those lines. Right. And so
interesting.
It really lines up with exactly what we're talking about. And, do I know that's true? No, but it sounds legit as hell. Right. I choose to believe it.
Yeah, well, it does. And you hear a lot about, and you see this a lot in mythology and even movies and stuff. I feel like where these archetypes kind of sneak in is this longing for legacy. It's like, okay, we acknowledge that our time here in this physical body and time space is limited, but there's still this desire to have this lasting legacy, create something that lasts even beyond us. And it's interesting because we don't really know if we're going to care about that once we're gone at all, or if we'll have any connection to that. Are we going to be sitting out, outside of space time, gazing down at the memory of that little blip of time we pretended to be a physical being? Will that bring us value after we leave that physical body? I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe.
And maybe. And, honestly, I think this is such an important reminder of why, when we really look at the things we do, they must come from a place of love, right? And non-attachment, because, I know with these podcasts, right, and Connect with Cannabis and all the things I'm doing now, I'm simply doing them because they're what I love right now, right? Tomorrow I can change all of that, right? But I'm doing them because they're what fill me up. And my intention and hope is that they fill other people up as well. And, that's simply, I think, the essence of, what creates mission and purpose. And all of these terms you hear, they get thrown around a lot, and they're kind of, muddy, if you will, in terms of what they actually translate to, because everyone has their own definition. But I think in my own subjective experience, if I had to sum it down, it's purpose is literally just doing what you love at any one point in time, right? And ultimately, it's going to evolve, right? If you follow what Eckhart Tolle says, we mentioned this a little bit in the Highly Optimized too, but, your inner purpose is your most important, if you will, right? Because that's like waking up, if you want to summarize it in a cliche term. But, moreover, really what that signifies is realizing that, if you want to follow certain religions, that you are God in human form, right? And that you are dreaming while awake. And so all of this is simply, if you want to put it in technological terms, a virtual reality, right? Or an experience, right? To put it more in a metaphysical term. And, really when you start understanding that, your purpose becomes whatever you're doing, right? It's this podcast right now. It's making a cup of cacao. It's, coaching Connect with Cannabis. These are mine anyway. And, it could be chopping wood. It could be, going on a hunt. It could be, literally anything, right? But, I know for me, I put so much pressure on this whole purpose, right? For a long time. And especially as a man, right? Like, because, we always hear a man's, ultimate mission is his purpose, right? And a woman's ultimate, mission is love, right? And I think these things are fading away before our very eyes, because, really, as we were talking in the last podcast, and we'll lead over into this one, I think masculine and feminine, the parameters around each of them are becoming one again, which is what I believe is meant to happen, right? Like, they're two poles of opposing forces of the same exact substance, right? Or it's a better way to put it. Like, they're two opposite poles of the same, substance. I think that actually describes it pretty well. And so really, like, within that, and I've had the experience of things like that on psychedelics. I can't explain in quantifiable, like, articulated terms what I experienced, but just this feeling of like, oh, that's what that feels like, right? And, you can experience that in your life, like, as a man, being able to be vulnerable is what people call a feminine quality, right? And in a woman, being able to get a lot of shit done, for instance, might be a masculine quality. But really, at the end of the day, it just makes up, it's like the sum is equal to its parts. I think that's what I'm trying to get at here, right? And I think the more that we try to differentiate between these, the more muddy it becomes, right? It's like it's all one, right? We're all one. And, if all the great metaphysical teachers are saying that, then I feel, to the degree that we separate ourselves and put ourselves in different religions and races and all of these things, the more challenging life becomes, because we believe that we're so much more different than we are similar. And it's so much harder to relate to someone from a different country because, oh, they're from this country, I'm from this country. And I think that one of the things that plant medicine specifically have opened up for me is I can be next to, my girlfriend, a friend, whatever, and they all feel like the exact same person to me. And they all subsequently feel like me. And so what does that mean? I don't know, right? But it's an experience I've had that I really can't put words to, but it's given me a lot of faith in a lot of the metaphysical teachings of Buddha, of Jesus, of all these people that, hey, that sounds legit to me, right? Not I can prove it right objectively, but subjectively, it seems right to me. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I wanted to stop by while I had your ear and share a very special announcement with you. You may have heard people say that we are facing an epidemic of loneliness in the world right now. We believe that this is only half of the story, and that the real epidemic and the root of feeling loneliness is a lack of connection. Do you want to connect to more purpose and passion with the important work you are doing? Do you wish you had closer friendships with people who understand you, listen to you, and are truly present with you? Are you wishing you and your partner could move deeper into love together? The connection in all of these areas comes down to the one most important element of connection, the ability to connect with yourself. If you are ready to see change in your life, if you are ready to feel differently when you wake up in the morning, if you are ready to step into the life you envision for yourself, the first and only route to making these changes is settling in, quieting down, and being able to connect to yourself. Now, this can be a major challenge in today's world with media, culture, and other energies that pull us out of our ability to connect. When you've tried fitness, meditation, and other self-development practices and still find yourself feeling alone and lacking connection, you may be feeling out of options and wondering if you'll ever be able to tap into your full potential that you know deep down is possible in your life. What we have found in working with our clients is that plant medicines, and cannabis in particular, can guide us in having the experience of what true connection looks and feels like. In this way, cannabis can act as a rite of passage for connection and a gateway toward the spouse, tribe, mission, and life you know you are ready for. Now, the pitfall here is that many people become codependent on the medicines, such as cannabis, and expect the medicine to do the work for them. If this continues, what will happen is the user will find themselves reaching for more and more cannabis to feel connection, without taking ownership of their role in the outcome of their experience, and thus they will fall into repeating the same painful patterns. As Zen Buddhism teaches, how you do anything is how you do everything. Therefore, if this painful pattern is showing up in your relationship with cannabis, it is likely a reflection of the same patterns you're experiencing in your friendships, romantic relationships, business, and your relationship with yourself. Learning to work with cannabis effectively will supercharge your experience and will help you get the result you are actually seeking, which is connection. We created a program to support seekers and high achievers like you in doing exactly this. To learn how to work with the healing power of cannabis to connect you back to yourself so you can unlock purpose, passion, and creativity in all areas of your life. What this program will give you is the long-lost user manual for cannabis. This user manual will teach you how to connect with cannabis correctly so that the plant can act as your spiritual aid and ally in life, just as our ancestors understood and practiced. If you're ready to unlock the full power of cannabis, meet like-minded people on the same path as you, build more purpose into your life, and have the most fun doing homework you've ever had, this message is for you. To learn more and qualify for your spot in the program, hop over to our Instagram profile at highly.optimized and book a discovery call. The conscious cannabis revolution is here. Will you be joining us? Sending all of you love. Enjoy the rest of the show. Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show.
Definitely. I think the more we can be okay with concepts existing and feelings existing that we don't necessarily have words for, like if we can kind of back up a little bit from categorizing and everything and saying, oh, is this a masculine thing? Is this a feminine thing? Because like you said, ultimately, there really is only one thing. There's one, from our perspective, infinite flow of energy and information. And, you know, there are times, at least in 3D reality, where I find there are benefits to classifying things, to naming things, to, you know, at least illusorily, temporarily separating different aspects of what we would call the divine. And I think that there's a lot of value in that, and it adds a lot of fun and richness to the experience. But what I find is that it's even more fun if you do that while remembering that everything is all one, and that there really is this beautiful unity flow that connects every bit of everything. And, it's words are powerful, because when you name something, that's a wall. You're putting a wall between two items. This plane that we're on now seems to be one of duality and polarity. So even this is one thing that I was hoping we would actually talk about today, because I wanted to run it by you. It's a very new concept that's come to me in the last few days. And this idea is just I'm taking a closer look at the concept of God. I'm taking a closer look at the concept of the divine, because when we name these things, we inherently create a separation between us and them. It's like, well, who's to say that what we thought of as God, this big superior force that maybe we're, depending on your conceptualization, maybe we are a tiny fractal shattered piece of that, which is great, but that still implies that we are somehow smaller or lesser than or less developed or somehow different in quality than the nature of this ultimate divine, the all, if you were going to look at it from a hermetic perspective. So, sometimes it's fun to pretend that there are these differences, but I'm starting to really discover a sweetness in playing around with the idea that there really is not a separation between us and what, is commonly called the divine.
I love that, because it lines up with a concept that I've been really diving into the last couple of weeks. And, I was made aware of this by the modern mystery schools, right? And their lineage, where, they talk about everything as simply light, right? And so their ultimate one source of light is called Ein Sof, right? And so you could consider this God, you consider Buddha, whatever. Again, when you put labels on things, if I say God, someone's like, oh, you're a Christian. No, I'm not a Christian, right? So a lot of these terms are charged. That's why I say source a lot, all these types of things. But
I know, but they all become really fluffy at some point. It's like you can use a new word when it's new for a while, and then pretty quickly it gets like swallowed by the I don't know. It's not novel anymore. We always need a novel word for God. I think that's the point. It's showing us like, hey, it's beyond words,
Exactly. And that's what I was just going to say is, this is the challenge when you start trying to explain with words something that is literally unexplainable, right? Like it is not comprehensible. It's not conceivable by the human mind, body, and spirit, right? Well, maybe the spirit, right? But not the mind specifically. And I think that's where a lot of people try to make these names from. And it's fine if you want to refer to it as something, right? But a lot of things in life, I would say anything, you need to have the direct experience of to really understand. So someone might hear God, right? And they have this preconceived notion. But at the same time, if you interact with a medicine like 5-MeO DMT, you can call it whatever you want. You know what you're talking about, right? And you know what you're thinking of, rather, right? Again, not objective truth, but you know what you're believing to be called God. You can't explain it in a word. And at a certain point, the analogy I always like to use is, think about it this way. Imagine if ice cream was your God, right? But yet you had never tried ice cream. And so you read about ice cream, you knew its makeup, you knew all the different ways to make it, you knew the different forms it would be served in. Eventually, if you really want to know what it is, you're just going to have to go try it, right? And
That's the only way.
Yeah. And so I think this is like the basis of what religion was made from. But the challenge is that over time, religion became less about having the direct experience yourself and more about externalizing it to someone else. Go to this building, have this one person that has the direct experience of God, and just like be around them. Right. And it's not so important that you have the experience, but, if you're around those people and you commit and devote to, a practice of going there weekly, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but, I feel a lot of people get stuck into the dogma of these things. And what I really loved about the mystery school was that, they really brought it all together, monotheism, polytheism, pantheism, right? All of these things you hear, and it's like, well, what's true, right? Well, what if it were all true, right? So the reason I like this is because that's what made sense to me. It's like, yes, everything is God, and yet it comes from one source, right? So Ein Sof is like this one source, this one beam of light. We'll use this analogy, right? It's a beam of light. And then like the Fibonacci sequence, it's broken into 2, then 4, then 8, then 16, right? And so at every single time it breaks, it creates a new dimension, right? Let's just call it that, right? And again, I might be butchering terms here, but just, follow along, me listeners, right? So at every single different dimension, there's a different conscious being there, right? And so as you start moving down, you get more and more fractals of light. And so therefore, all of those fractals, even when you get to millions of them, are God, if you want to call it that. And yet they come from one source. So it's both monotheism and pantheism wrapped into one. And that makes the perfect sense, right? Because trying to argue between those two, which is what I did for a while, like, okay, I see what they mean about everything being one, but I also like everything is God, right? So it's like, it's been this challenge. And, that's one thing that part of the reason why that teaching resonated so much with me was because when I experienced 5-MeO-DMT, that's exactly what I experienced, was that the totality of that explanation rolled into an experience. And I think that, that's one of the best things that these experiences can open us up to, is the direct experience of what these metaphysical teachers talk about. Now, of course, you can get there through meditation, through breath work, through these things. But when those people were really achieving that to a great number, they were living in ashrams 2,000 years ago with no internet, no technology, no distractions, no planes to make you travel, no parties, right? Things like that. It was a much, I wouldn't say easier, but more approachable practice to be able to get there. These days, we have all of these amazing things like technology, right? And I'm not one that's going to say like, oh, it's because of technology that we can't get there. But at the same time, it is a factor, right? And so, what I see plant medicines as being able to do potentially, right? Of course, everyone's different, is, at least in my experience, is being able to, yes, be a part of the current world and enjoy these advancements in technology, and also still be able to get the direct experience that gives me a framework for what might experience when I'm doing breath work and meditation. And speaking for myself, when I was able to have and continue to have these experiences, it deepens my devotion to my sober practice of meditating, breath work, yoga, and subsequently, it actually allows me to interact with these medicines much less often, right? Like specifically cannabis. I mean, you went through Connect with Cannabis, what the program's about. And really it came as a result of me going through a troubled relationship where cannabis became the replacement for my spiritual practice when I was younger, right? I'm talking 12, 13 years ago. And then over time, as I started to meditate and started to do breath work, I started to have awareness that maybe I wasn't using this medicine the way it was intended to be used, right? Or the way that I could maximize the benefit of it, right? Both physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, materially, whatever you want to call it, right? And so over time, now what I do is when I have a challenge where I'm feeling like, I'm curious about something and it feels like there might be a block there, right? Well, considering I run a business and I can't go run away and do 100-day retreat, right? At this point in my life, that's where I'm working towards. But, because I can't, unplug for that long, I can sit with cannabis in the comfort of my own home, right? I don't have to travel to a jungle. I don't have to take a week off of work, right? I can have a quick interplay with something that just allows me to go right past the threshold of where my current evolution is at. And I can go, that's what I was missing, right? And then when I come back, it's not like, boom, I'm cured. It's like, okay, I journal about that experience. And then through my sober practices of, rituals and meditating and breath work and all of these things, I then start to dive into, okay, what's blocking me from seeing that? Because I know that's possible. I experienced it. So what's blocking me? And then the subconscious patterns come up. Then all these things come up. And that is, quote unquote, the work, which people talk about. And I think that's the best way that I've now learned to interact with every medicine, but especially cannabis as well.
Yeah, man. Beautifully said. I think that I sometimes have this thought, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it too, that cannabis is like a sneaky goddess who has somehow infiltrated our society right when we need her most. And it started with like CBD. It's like, hey, this won't get you high. It's just CBD. It'll lower inflammation in the body. It might bring down a little bit of the staticky noise of the chatter happening in your mind. If you deal with anxiety symptoms frequently, it'll just bring you down a little bit. And then it's like, oh, here's Delta 8 THC. It's not quite THC. It's a little bit psychoactive, but it slips through the tight grip of the legal establishment. And then now legalization in a lot of different states. And if you really look at the timeline of how all this stuff is becoming available, the hemp goddess herself has made herself much more available to everyone. And coincidentally, if you want to look at it this way, I'm implying that it's not coincidence. We're waking up. There's a massive shift happening in consciousness right now. It's huge and it's undeniable. And it's not because everyone necessarily is at home, lighting up every night, but enough people are, and enough people are connecting to the plant medicinally that I think the healing feminine spirit of the plant is slowly, like moss growing on the side of a building. It's finding its way amongst us and reminding us that we are all connected and we are all one. And, regardless of the way that you're approaching life in terms of, maybe you're or maybe you're part of a religious institution, and that's your operating system for life. Well, that's okay, because that's pointing in the same direction as everyone else's are. And that is that universal unity, that love, that unconditional acceptance of everyone and everything. And I think cannabis has been really, really helpful for the masses at starting to go in that direction.
You know what I love about that is it lines up with a philosophy that I've been tuning into recently where, if you think of oneness or God or any of these things as the moon, well, cannabis isn't the moon, but it can be the finger that points you at the moon, right? And that's something that, really allows me to see that cannabis truly is the people's medicine. And what I mean by that is that, like I was saying before, this medicine can be light, right? And of course, like there are other medicines that can be light, but when's the last time you heard someone do ayahuasca and they're like, yeah, it was super chill. I was able to, go to work the next day. And, it's like, that doesn't happen, right? And there are great, amazing things to every medicine, right? And I'm not talking down by any means on these things, but, what I do mean is that, let's face it, right? Like a lot of these medicines are still fully illegal. And along with that comes a stigma. And along with that comes subconscious beliefs and stories, right? And so as something becomes more socially acceptable, like cannabis is, right? Well, let's think about the reverberating effects of that. People's families won't think so bad of people interacting with it, right? Moms are now not getting their kids taken away from interacting with cannabis, right? Once again, you can interact with it in your own home, right? You can use a microdose and be able to get just past the threshold, which is the actual way that most religious ways that cannabis has been interacted with use it, right? They're not blasting themselves out. I'm not saying they don't do that, but in most cases, they're using it as the people's medicine. And what I mean by that is that they're using it to just cross the barrier where they're getting past that limitation of whatever's blocking them and allowing them to, once again, create the memory of bliss within their body. Because here's the thing, right? And this is, why I love cannabis so much is, with things like psilocybin and LSD and MDMA and ayahuasca and peyote and all these things, they are incredible, right? But they're less likely to be used frequently. And I'm not, arguing for or against the use of cannabis daily or, weekly, monthly, whatever. But what I am saying is that the possibility is there, right, for someone to interact with it in a conscious, responsible way more frequently. And what happens is just like the subconscious is able to be reprogrammed over continuous, reverberations of, affirmations. We were talking in the last episode about I am enough, right? Reprogramming the subconscious through repetition. The body is the same way. And so if you're able to start remembering what joy, what love, what compassion, what bliss feel like in your body through the power of cannabis, well, then when you're not interacting with cannabis, there's that pathway that's there, right? So then, if you have a practice like meditation or breathwork or whatever, it's much easier for your body to go, oh, I know exactly where we're going. But when you don't have the framework and the awareness of what that feels like, it's a lot harder to get there, right? It's the same way as, if you're going on a drive, right? And these days, again, technology is amazing. We have GPS, right? Long gone are the days of MapQuest. But, imagine if you're going somewhere and you're like, okay, I'm going an hour away and I have a general idea of how to get there versus like, oh, I have the GPS, right? How much more easily can you get there and how much more confident are you in your ability to get there on time? And so it's the same way with the body. And this is what I love so much about cannabis. And really what I feel is the sleeping giant within this plant that is coming online. And, we were talking before we hit record about, how challenging it is that people that have never smoked cannabis and pretty much didn't inhale and ran from it their whole life are now running these establishments, right? And what is the reverberation of energy that's put into the medicine that these corporations are creating, right? And so, I think that luckily, a lot of states are seeing the importance of home grow, right? And they're seeing the importance of, and they're not probably thinking about it from this point of view of like, they're going to be able to connect spiritually, right? But they're seeing like, hey, a lot of people can't afford the ridiculously high prices of these dispensaries. And so again, like seeing is everything happening for us, which is how I choose to view life. We could see like, yes, thank goodness the prices are so high at dispensaries because it's forcing people to start looking at other options. Okay, well, maybe I can grow my own, right? And the art of cultivating a plant is synonymous with the art of cultivating yourself, right? What does a plant need for life? It needs food, it needs water, it needs love, it needs shelter, it needs, care, right? Well, those are the exact things that are basic needs for human beings, right? So, the synonymous, nature here is really exciting because, really like one of the things I've noticed is that people are more disconnected than ever, right? We hear this all the time, right? This epidemic of loneliness. Well, I see loneliness as the result and the lack of connection as the cause. And so when you think about how people get food, when you think about how people get water, when you think about how people meet friends, right? It's all through this different way than human nature, right? We go to the store to buy meat. We don't hunt the meat ourselves. We go to the store to buy vegetables. We don't grow them ourselves. We go through social media to meet friends. We don't get them ourselves. And I'm not saying those things are bad, right? I'm just saying that once again, it's about balance, right? Like it's fine if, I do all of those things, right? We met through social media, right? So there's amazing things you can do, right? But if you're only going that way, well, then guess what's going to happen? Your ability to connect, that muscle is going to be weakened. And so then when you think about like the food shortages that, may or may not be coming, you think about what the pandemic did in terms of like taking distractions away. The beauty in that, and there was a lot of challenge, right? And I am aware of that, but the beauty of it, which I choose to see because it's happening regardless. It's the only difference is how we choose to see it. So I choose to see it with beauty and happening for us because I'd rather see it that way than the other way. And what I see in that is that our ability to connect is being dropped back on us, right? Like, the ability to go connect with someone in person is now so much more valuable than meeting someone just solely on a Zoom screen all the time, right? You realize that could be taken away again. I want to go meet this person and share a hug with them in person. Our ability to get food in the store has been challenged, right? So we want to make sure that like, hey, I at least want to know how to grow my own food. I want to know the basics, right? I don't need to always do it, right? Again, balance. But I at least want to have the empowerment of the knowledge of how to go about this. And what's going to start happening is we start to get back to the earth. That's my personal dream that I see happening. And it lights me up, man. I'm so excited.
Oh, me too, man. I thoroughly believe that all the technological infrastructure and progress that we swim through every day. It's interesting that earlier you referred to it as the current society, because it is a current. It's an electrical current that flows through this semi-artificial world that we've created, and it's noisy and it somehow can block our access to the more subtle current of the divine flow that existed long before any of this stuff ever did that we've created for ourselves now. We are, if whether or not the greater reality is a simulation, we've definitely created our own simulation inside of that simulation. What I'm getting at is I think all of these technologies that we're creating and that we're working on are our best attempts at replicating what we are already innately capable of. The cell phone is a good example of, I think we have the ability to communicate telepathically and remotely and across space and time. And there are still, you hear little anecdotes of people doing this in a lot of different places. There are people like Rupert Sheldrake who are actually studying this clinically, showing that we have these abilities and that we have interspecies communication abilities. And then you hear things like the Aboriginal shamans who will meet up in lucid dream space and say, hey, we need to have a, arch tribal council meeting at the usual spot. Let's meet at this time. And everyone agrees upon this meeting in the dream space. And then when that actual time comes in real time, everybody shows up. And it's like, well, how is that possible? They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have email. Well, they had those same abilities, but we have been somewhat deceived in thinking that we need to rely upon some type of physical outside of ourselves medium to communicate. And communication is just one aspect of this. NASA is another good example. Astral travel. We have the ability to explore other worlds in the comfort of our own home for free. Anytime we can do this, but we don't have the cultural technology to have told us early on these things were possible. So a lot of people believe they're not possible. And then the body believes that it's not possible. And it doesn't happen because, if someone told you, I'm a musician, so I can't commonly use this analogy, but the first time you pick up a guitar, the first time I picked up a guitar, I could barely make it make a sound that was pleasing at all. And if no one told me it was possible to make that guitar play something beautiful, I probably would have never picked it up again because, or like riding a bike, you don't get it the first time. And so if you're judging your abilities based off of your first experience and no one else is there telling that little, you that this is possible with diligence and practice, you might never develop those skills. So my big question is, what are we capable of? And when I look around at technology, I'm really wondering how much of that we could do on our own. Like, look at the huge, massive, several ton, multi-million dollar machines that we use to just move heavy stuff. You know what I mean? Like these massive cranes that we have are just huge machines designed to move steel beams from one side of a construction site to the other. There's evidence that we used to do stuff like this in the past with our voice. You know, there are legends and texts about little dwarf people who would whistle stones through the air because they somehow had an understanding of resonant frequency and how sound affects the physical material world. They had knowledge of this that has obviously been forgotten, but that doesn't mean that it's not still totally true and possible.
Of course, man. And, I love what you brought up there. It's like, we're told from an early age at a certain point, Santa Claus isn't real, right? The tooth fairy is not real and all of these things. And, not that I believe that Santa Claus is real or anything, but at the same time, if I chose to believe that because it helped my experience of life be better, then who is someone to tell me it's not true, right? What is the damage that happens from someone believing that's true? So long as they don't go ahead and say, anyone who doesn't believe this is going to die, right? Of course, then,
and that's where we run into the idea of religion, because I feel like religions are operating systems for reality. And we live in such a loving, inclusive universe that the answer is always yes. So if you believe that we live in a paternal monotheistic reality, well, very quickly, you're going to see evidence of that. And so you can model your paradigm around pretty much whatever you want to believe. If you want to believe that the nature that we find ourselves in is governed by principles or elemental forces, or a pantheon of multicolored, multi-limbed, half human, half animal deities, like all of these are yes. The universe will always have a smile and a thumbs up, and it will work for you. And that even nihilism is allowed. You can believe that none of this exists and none of this is real, and you're still going to get a nice big happy thumbs up from all that is. And it becomes very fun, I think, because there's a level you can get to where you can implement the pieces and parts of these that enrich your life experience, and they're not exclusive of each other. Every morning I bless my water with I call in various Hindu deities and vibe those energies into my morning tonic that I drink. And then in another part of my day, I may find myself connecting with the goddess Ishkakau, that passionate, energetic, feminine force that fills your body when you take that first little bite of dark chocolate. Like, you feel that's real. It's a force. And these are just examples, obviously. But what I think is so cool is that it's all a thing. It's all real. If you stumble across the Norse runes, you realize like, oh, these are symbols that have not only been charged by their, ancestral use in not only divination, but also that these symbols themselves have, whether it be biogeometric power or they're glyphs that, carry some type of meaning put on them by non-human ancient deities, like however you want to look at it. All of these things are both allowed and real and useful. And that's one of the coolest things about this reality, I think.
Absolutely, man. And, a science that I love looking into that actually has some quantifiable like proof of what we're talking about. And you could look into sigils, you could look into sacred geometry. I mean, for anyone who's like, what are they talking about with sigils? Well, let me just tell you that every big manufacturing company knows that sigils are real. And that's why they have a brand symbol, right? Because the mind, right? And I'm also keen to say the spirit, right? The being, if you want to call it the totality of the mind, body, and spirit, the being understands symbols even better than like words themselves, right? And really
far better.
Words are just symbols too, right? But if you create a sigil that says self-empowerment, you look at that thing every single day, you will start to feel empowered, right? Why? I don't even begin to be able to understand why or whatever, but I do choose to believe it. Now, again, there is the component of what you choose to believe, like you were so perfectly illustrating. You can believe that every single thing we've said in this is complete bullshit, right? And you know what? You're going to find evidence that it is, right? Because you're going to be able to be like, see, this is real. I mean, this is not real and this is not real. And you know what? That's your choice, right? Because what I believe is that we all are the creator of our experience. We get to choose our own adventure. And, a perfect example of this is during psychedelic experiences. Why could two people have a very similar experience that, let's say, it's dark, right? Or let's just say it's challenging, right? And one person sees it as dark while the other person sees it as beneficial, right? And we were talking about earlier how, my experience in Colorado versus the recent one I had, where I felt like a dark energy, what I really like perceived as a dark energy when I was in Colorado. And I don't mean dark in like a sinister or satanic way or anything like that. What I mean is like a heavy feeling. I should say heavy instead of dark, where, I didn't really know what to do with it, what to make of it. And I was like, oh, that's a feeling I don't want to feel. Right. And so therefore I started realizing in that moment, like, oh yeah, that's a bad feeling, right? That's a dark feeling. I started putting all these stories to it because I was finding evidence that goes along with that. Yeah, it's not a feeling I like, right? Versus when I had another experience with literally the exact same feeling, it was like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. And then I was able to cry and let go of a lot of stuff I was carrying, right? And in that moment, that was the best feeling I ever felt. And because I choose to believe that, it was the best feeling I had ever felt, right? Not because it was any different than the one that was perceived as heavy or dark before, but because my belief around it changed. And I think the power of belief, when I hear this, I'm like, it's so simple. And that's why it's so challenging to understand. That's what I choose to believe, because let's think about it. We're in an age where we're smarter than ever intellectually. We read more books. We have PhDs, aka what Paul Chek calls pilot higher and deeper. And, what that does is it starts to close off the mind in a bunch of different ways where this is what's possible. This is not possible because this is what's been proven. But let's face it, right? Lobotomies were great up until they weren't, right? Aspartame was the best thing ever, and now it causes cancer, right? Like GMOs were not shown to cause any health effects until they were, right? So, really, like, if we create a religion out of science, right, and we start only choosing to believe what we can see, what we can prove quantifiably, then we take the ultimate expression of sovereignty out of our life, right? Which is the ability to choose to believe what helps our experience of life be better. And then from there, when you start actually realizing that you hold all the power, well, it stings for about 5 minutes because it's a lot of personal power and it's a lot of, personal responsibility for realizing that anything in your life that's happened in some way, shape, or form has been, your own doing. And it doesn't mean that say if you got in a car accident, right? And, I'm saying not a bad one. Let's just say not a bad car accident, so it's easier for people to understand. Let's say you get an fender bender and you're like, this motherfucker behind me wasn't paying attention and this, he ruined my car and yada, yada, right? Or you could be like, hey, you know what? This accident made me realize that my life could be over in a second. And you know what? I choose to believe in this moment that I have some priorities that need to be reprioritized. And I have some things that I don't want to leave on the table when I leave this realm, right? And so same incident, right? But different belief structures and different outlooks and awarenesses around what the actual situation was. You get to choose that. The reason why I feel like that's so challenging for a lot of people and why it was so challenging for me is because two things. One, a lot of personal responsibility. But number two, it's too simple for the mind to wrap its head around. Like, you just mean I can believe anything and it'll happen? Yeah, if you choose to believe that. You could also believe you can't, and then you won't, right? But, the degree of personal power we have in this lifetime is outstanding. And I believe just now in this collective dark night of the soul we're going through, starting to be touched upon and remembered, because it's not a realization, it's a remembering, because the civilizations of the past obviously had some amount of evidence of this, right? And that's obviously aware with the symbols they used, with how they moved rocks and things like this, like with you look at Göbekli Tepe, right? And there's lines that are so perfectly carved in rock that we can't even replicate it today. So like, what explanation is that? Someone with a chisel? It's like no one that's ever lived in our modern day time could do that with even technology, let alone a chisel. So there's so many mysteries. And that's why I feel it's so important to realize that, like, we don't know anything. We're not supposed to know anything. We're supposed to be investigators, right? Wanderers of the wide, wide world, and make our own sense out of things. Whatever helps us feel more happy, joyful, compassionate, and grateful to be alive, whatever that is.
Totally agree. I think that believing is a lot more satisfying than knowing too. How great do you really feel when you know, when you discover a new fact versus creating a new fact and knowing and believing that anything is possible, because that's what generates novelty. That's one beautiful thing, to tie it to cannabis, is that is one of the easiest and quickest ways to zoom out a little bit, step out of your typical day-to-day, not just routine, but also your consciousness routine, the state of mind that you're most used to resonating with, and the problems that you think are problems very quickly dissolve when you're able to zoom your perspective out even just a tiny bit. And I think that's the magical effect of a lot of these different plant medicines, is that they do zoom you out. Some of them zoom you in, and that can be very uncomfortable because you're laser focusing on the part of you that may be experiencing pain or discomfort from lack of connection. But, obviously it allows you to reconnect and experience even more joy afterwards as a result. But I just think it's the fact that our existence and our quality of life is so intimately tied to our beliefs, that's the real good news. That's what, like, when I think about it, I want to go door to door with pamphlets and be like, hey, have you heard the good news? Do you know that you get to decide the good news? You get to decide what this reality is. And all of the questions about what this reality is kind of go away, because they can be very nagging if you're looking for objective truth. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to be duped. I don't want to be fooled. I want to understand what I'm a part of so that I know how to, say, experience bliss and connection and love. But what if you could just decide that you had the ability to feel those emotional states now? Well, you'd have to get over the hurdle of all of the programming that those things only come from action and from acquisition of resources or accomplishments, or maybe a specific roll of the dice genetic profile. That's a whole another aspect of that too, is that some people, we all come here in a different physical avatar. And if we cling tightly to the belief that our genetics are influencing our experience of life, well, that's a powerful sword to wield, because, it creates this idea of disempowerment. You don't get to be fully in control, and we are so in control. And I've been playing with this idea lately of, when you get into things like law of attraction and manifestation, it seems to be like there might just be a veil between us and what we're creating. And so we personify that as being separate from us. Like, oh, that's God. You pray, and then God answers your prayer and makes this thing happen, or whoever it is separate from you. But what if it actually is us creating all of the time, and we just kind of forgot that? Well, what a cool, joyful experience it is to rediscover how powerful we are, and imagine the world that we are all going to be inside of when we all remember that, and we can co-create, because there's a powerfully, exponentially multiplicative effect of synergizing our intentions with each other. And if we just synergize around building an easy world and just letting things happen and just seeing how it goes, just letting go of the wheel just a little bit, let's as a collective, let's just start a tiny bit and see where it goes. And I think we might find ourselves in a place where, these things that we thought were inevitable consequences of, say, not having a government, who's going to run things? Who's going to keep the murderers and the serial killers from running wild in the streets? Well, maybe they won't. Maybe if we all believe that we are all innately here to love, and if we all lean into that rather than leaning on some type of illusory power structure, maybe we will be in paradise. I think we should try it.
Yeah. The evidence is everywhere, right, of what we're speaking to, right? And again, that's my perceived notion of it, right? I'm not saying it's objectively true, but I've met many millionaires that are absolutely miserable, right? That are addicted to things alcohol, cocaine. They're literally not fulfilled anywhere. They're not even fulfilled with their work, right? They're not fulfilled with anything. And then I've met some people that barely have a nickel to their name that just can't stop smiling. Right. That are excited and elated, and they believe that tomorrow is going to be the day everything turns around. And hey, if it's not tomorrow, it's the next day. I'm just having I'm having fun.
Time isn't real, man.
Yes. And so
want to hit this?
Yeah, exactly. And when I see this, I like to boil things down and kind of control alt delete. That's how I like to make sense of things. And so I see two sides of the spectrum that are really like the same totality, the totality of the same thing, but we have control and surrender, right? And so the people that are a lot of times these millionaires and billionaires, they're trying to control every aspect of their life. Well, no, I need another boat. I need another house. I need more money, and then I'll be happy, right? If this, then that, right? And the surrender side is, hey, whatever I'm getting right now is perfect, and I'm going to be happy with this because this is what I created for myself, right? And so, and then those people on the surrender side then get to go, and if I'm not happy with what I want, well, let me get clear on where I'm going. Start visualizing, start manifesting, to throw these cliche new terms, right? Which are great terms. I love them. But, we put terms on everything to understand them. And a lot of times people are like, oh, that's woo woo, right? It's like, no, it's not really woo woo. It's using the greatest human superpower, which is imagination. Because if you don't know where you're going, how the hell are you going to get there, right? Like if you take off in your car, but you don't know where you're going, well, you're just going to drive forever. But even if you don't have a map, but you know where you're going to go, eventually you'll be able to ask some people, follow some highway signs, and eventually get to where you want to go. And if you don't, you're going to have an amazing adventure along the way because you have a purpose of some sort, right? A purpose of having fun, a purpose of going somewhere. And so, yeah, I feel like that's one of the biggest clashes we're seeing right now in society is those that are like, no, we have to control everything. And those that are like, hey, man, you just got to flow. Right now, by flowing, I don't mean like, I'm just going to sit on the couch and let life happen to me, right? I don't mean that. Once again, it's a balance, right? And within the control and surrender, you have, for instance, to bring it back to cannabis, like I have my weekend sessions where I flow, right? My work's done for the week. I've taken my masculine action, and now I'm going to jump into the feminine, and I'm going to ask myself, how happy am I? Am I enjoying what I'm doing? What sounds exciting next? Like, what am I curious on, right? What questions do I have? And then I take those experiences, and now that I've down regulated and been able to cultivate energy, now the next week I'm ready to like go on the straight and narrow. During the weeks, I don't interact with cannabis normally, and I just get my masculine stuff done because I know where I want to go. And so it's exciting, right? And so it's the balance of both. And I've been on both sides where I've controlled everything and then I've surrendered to everything. And that's why for me, my own experience, I know it's about surrender. I mean, I know it's about balance rather, because, within the balance, it's just like the Tao Te Ching talks about, right? The objective is not to have the pendulum swing all the way one way or all the way the other way, because to the degree that it spins, flows to one side, it's going to have a reverberating backspin, right? And so eventually you want to get it right to the middle where you can sit in that stillness that is the middle point and be able to experience life from a perspective that is one which you get to be, right? Because we are human beings, not human doings, right?
Sure.
Of course, we have the human part of that, which is the form, and we have the being, which is the formless. But again, if you take either side of that and you tune into only that, you're going to miss out on half the amazing beauty of life. So the point is to be an integrated human being and understand what that means, right? It's like, yes, I have my, if you want to call it masculine side and feminine side, if you want to call it your form and formless side, your yin and yang, whatever you want to call it, I have my balance between those two, and I'm a balanced being, right? I'm a balanced human being. And I think that's the real gold at the end of the rainbow, if you ask me, in my experience anyway.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I really like the analogy of going for a drive, because the idea of driving from one place to another implies that you want to get from where you are now to where you aren't. But what if the whole reason that we're here is because whatever it is that we're a part of, you can call it the universe, it just wanted to experience. It just wanted to go for a drive. So we're here trying to figure out, where do we go? Like what city are we trying to drive to? What road do we need to take to get there? But what if our existence itself is the goal? If you look at the masculine as being goal oriented and strategic, well, it gets kind of funny really quick, because you realize that, yes, it's a divine masculine decision to decide to surrender to the feminine flow of all that is. And you kind of realize, oh, this is all just one big, beautiful thing. And I think the experiential value of every single second that we're alive might be equivalent to every other one. And that's what it's all about. That's actually, one of the most profound lessons that I was shown from specifically psilocybin is that, or whatever consciousness exists through the portal of psilocybin, is that it's all okay. and that there's no problem. It kept telling me, is like, have you realized, it asked me this question, have you realized that there's no problem yet? And that everything is happening exactly as it ought to. And that when outside of this realm, there's no one waiting with a stopwatch or a clipboard or a tally sheet. There's no, you can come back here as many times as you like, and it's all going to be wonderful. There's no such thing as failure. There's no such thing as missing your mark or going the wrong way. Is it possible for there to be disharmony between, say, a goal and where you end up? Sure. But that calls into the question, where are these goals coming from? Because I think the ultimate goal, from what I can see so far, and this is one thing that I feel like I really, really inherited from listening to Terence McKenna, is this idea of novelty. And I think that from a if you zoom all the way out and you can try to imagine being infinite consciousness, the all, God, whatever point, the all point, the all that is, that for which there is no other, that would be kind of boring, because you don't get to play with anyone else. You don't have any friends, because it's just you. You're all everything. And I'm sure it's a feeling of content, satisfaction beyond anything that we can experience here when it comes to our being. But think about how much fun it is to climb a mountain or hold hands with someone or eat a delicious fresh picked peach. These things only exist with these temporary walls between everything. And there's so much beauty in that. And there's no rush to get out of here, because it's all infinite. So the universe is taking its time with us, and we are allowed to do the same and bask in this beautiful garden that we've created. And the more that you surrender to that, the more things seem to come to you. And the more you end up finding other people who are living the same way, which is really cool. I made a new friend recently. Her whole existence is based upon this concept, and anything she needs just flows right into her reality seemingly effortlessly, because I don't think that this expenditure of effort that we've been taught to maximize, just like drink coffee and go, go, go. I don't think that works. We gave it a shot. We gave it an honest shot. We felt it out. We experienced it, because I think at some level, the universe must have been ccurious what that was like. And maybe it was fun for a while, but it's also exhausting from our perspective. So being able to hop in and out of that concept, and then the other strategy of just allowing things to flow into your being, that seems to be how you get the sweetest peaches.
Yes. That was beautiful, first of all. And second of all, I really like to think about lions when I think about this, right? The lion is the apex predator of the jungle, right? And yet at the same time, they sleep 20 hours a day. Why? Because they know they can get the kill in 4 hours, right? They're not drinking coffee or whatever the equivalent would be for lions and going out there and, they're being all stressed out. I got to do all this stuff and I got to make sure and all this stuff. They're relaxed until the moment they're not relaxed, right?
Yep.
And I think that is exactly what we're speaking to right here, right? Is, what plant medicine has done for me is realize like when the time to be on is and when the time to be off is, because let's face it, your on has no power unless you learn to turn off, right?
Yeah.
Because too much yang will turn you in, whether you like it or not. That's what heat stroke is, right? You go too hard, you're going to get cold, right? And your body is going to balance itself out. So do you want to choose to be balanced, or do you want to be forced to be balanced? Because it's going to happen regardless, right? This is what happens within the realm of addiction, right? This is what happens within the realm of really anything that you can apply this too much yang energy to, right? And this is why every great text talks about this in their own way, right? You can forget all the dogma of what God you want to believe in or whatever. At the key, at the center of what these books talk about, of what these metaphysical teachers talk about, they talk about this balance, right? This unity between, again, yin and yang, masculine, feminine, whatever you want to call it. And at the end of the day, the reason why that's not forced on you is because, hey, great spirit's down for whatever, right? So if you want to go out there and try drinking 8 cups of coffee and forcing your way through life, go ahead and do it, right? But at the end of the day, I choose in my life to realize that I've done that shit sucked. And now I'm ready for a better reality, one where I show myself self-love, right? Like I know that these next 2 weeks are going to be very work heavy. So I've already gone over that and really like made adjustments where I needed to be able to make sure that I can come through. And then I know that there's a big rest period coming after, right? The old me would be like, yeah, let's do 6 episodes every week and just crush it and be so far ahead of that. And you know what happens? The podcasts have less quality. I'm way more burnt out. And then I might not be able to do any podcasts for 4 months because I'm so burned out. So what am I trying to do there? Prove something to myself? And speaking from my own personal experience, that's exactly what I was trying to do. And once again, psychedelics made me aware of all this. First time I did a heroic dose of mushrooms, I took a look in the mirror and I was like, oh shit, you didn't know what you didn't know. And it was cosmic laughter, right? I was like, wow, that's hilarious. I'm glad I learned that, because now think about how many people, especially men out there, but women definitely too, are going through this, right? And are they going to want to hear it from someone in a therapy appointment that may have never gone through that? Maybe, who knows, right? Or maybe that therapist has gone through that and they can relate to them. But the key here is that to the degree that you have been challenged is the degree to which you are going to help other people or be able to help other people through that exact same challenge. And so, the whole idea is like, get the hint after a while and like work through the challenge. So then you can actually go help other people through it as well and stop going through it yourself, right? Because it will be recurring, right? This is what triggers are, right? If you don't choose to look at it when it triggers you, it'll just keep triggering you until you decide to look at it. And that could be a lifetime that you spend, being addicted to alcohol or something because you can't stand an aspect of your life that really, at the brunt of it, maybe just 20 minutes of pure feeling and, kicking and screaming and yelling and crying, and then it's over, right? Like then that's over and you've taken that off your back. You've taken those cement blocks out of your backpack, right? And so I love, everything we've talked about in this episode. And it really is, reigning so true, because it's allowing me to realize like, wow, I imagine there's still levels to go for me, of course, right? I'd be naive to not think so, but also it's really allowing me to see how far I've come from the old version of me and how grateful I am that I've bought the ticket and taken that ride into that. And, I really want to give you a chance to, plug where you're at, man, plug where people can find you. Where can they dive in deep with you, man? I know there's going to be tons of listeners that are like, I want to hear more from Devin Bailey. And so I'm definitely going to have you on for a round 2 where we can dive in for a few hours and really
I would love that, man. Love that.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that people know where they can find you, where they can find your services you offer, all that jazz.
Sure. Yes. Well, the number one best place to find me, honestly, is just on Facebook. I know it's old school, but I'm pretty, in that aspect, minimalist when it comes to social media and stuff. So find me on Facebook, connect with me there for sure. If you want to chat, if you want to hang out, all good. I have a little bit of space right now in terms of taking on new clients. So, brief snapshot of what I usually do is it's very custom tailored to the person. If someone is, what I seem to vibe most with and be able to give most help with people is those who are kind of freshly new to these ideas and waking up rapidly, because we are in the middle of a global awakening and people are being activated much how I was, but very quickly and without an instruction manual. And so, trying to integrate some of these concepts of, maybe in your reality, you're starting to experience evidence of past lives or weird karmic ties with other people that you don't understand. You're starting to see the loops repeating, this type of thing. So that's generally the type of thing that I like to help people through, because it's so much fun, because everyone's on their own little journey. So that's a cool place. For a while, I was on the directory for something called Imagination Project. It's imagination with a Z, like imagine a Zion. I was one of the service providers on there, but last I checked, the website was down. So I don't necessarily quote me on that as being a reliable way to find me, but you could definitely check it out. And then also, if you're into music, you should check out my music. Go to lumielmusic.com. And you'll find a bunch of cool tunes that I highly recommend pairing with shamanic experience.
Yes.
And let me know what you think.
Hell yes. And dude, of course, you'll see this trend in my podcast. I have a last question for you, right?
Ooh, I have the best answer.
Yes. As my dad used to say, I have an answer. I hope it matches, right? And so that question is, if someone listening was just swayed by you to experience psychedelic medicines for the first time, what suggestion would Devin Bailey give to allow them the smoothest experience possible?
Openness to anything that appears. we entering into these plant medicine ceremonies are really children, in the sense that it doesn't matter how many experiences you've had, or how many plants you've connected with, or how many fungi you've connected with. It is always a novel experience. And one thing that has been tremendously helpful for me throughout my journey is being open, and also embracing the sacredness of these medicines. And when you look at them as medicines, and that doesn't necessarily imply that you are broken or sick, but you look at the situation, or you look at the experience as something that is going to add lasting value to your experience of life as a human being here. And that approach and philosophy has kept me safe through a lot of different experiences. And I can very confidently say that I've never once had a bad trip or an experience that went south with any plant medicine ever. And this is because I chose to perceive it as being for me and being a overall positive experience before I even connected with the substance. And I think that is the way to really get the most benefit and have the greatest life enhancing experience, because it's really only resistance that creates those bad trips and those bad experiences. Is, you're opening up channels that you may not have opened before, and you don't know what you're going to see. There might be things that float to the surface of your awareness that seem terrifying, especially if you feel like they're part of you. But the more you can love those, and you go in with open arms and just the open acceptance of a child, I would say that's how you'll get the best out of it.
I love that, man. One of my favorite mantras is show me, help me, teach me. Right. And when I use that, they understand, like, at least from what I believe, that like, okay, you're willing to move through these things and you see that there's something here for you. You might not understand it, but you have faith in the process. And if you can come from that point of view, ultimately you will leave that experience, no matter how challenging it might be, knowing in your heart of hearts that it was meant for you at that time. And
100%.
That is the secret sauce. And guys,
they're all good trips.
Yes, absolutely. When Devin and I first had a call together, the battery that is the totality of my being was immediately lit up. His own vast quest for understanding resonated deep within me, as I have found myself questioning each and every aspect of life throughout my time here on Earth. And I knew right from there that this was someone I was going to learn from and benefit from greatly by having in my life. Since that first call, Devin and I have continued to connect through the Connect with Cannabis program, and I was always eager and excited to hear about his experiences in the modules, as every takeaway he had made me realize just how powerful the medicine of cannabis truly was, which is something I had always known individually, but to see others resonate and open up my eyes to even more possibilities within that realm of that medicine was truly a gift that I will treasure forever. Devin is devoted to his experience of life and his purpose, which is assisting others in the realms of health, spirituality, and overall having the best possible experience of life imaginable. And for anyone who is curious about learning more about how he can assist you in your own life, do yourself a favor and reach out to him to embark on that journey beginning today. Devin, thank you so much for sharing your time, experiences, and curiosities with us today on the show. And until next time, my brother, may your journey be smooth and full of light. Aho.